Howdy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing?
Good. Um, so, as I said for my comment, I wanted to um, talk about this is probably like one of my biggest issues. I have, um, I've watched your content for a while, and I do enjoy it, even though I disagree with you on a lot. But um, so like you've said that. So my problem is like when you talk about like basically everyone on the right, uh, I think you lump all the different factions way too like they're all almost the same. Like so my problem is like with what I would call mind reading. Like you say that all these certain conservatives or whatever, they're like fully aware of like for example, like the recent controversy with like Kanye West about how the right wingers they they quietly like agree with him, or and like they like that, but they just don't like that he's saying it out loud. So I'm wondering, like, do you think, like, how many people on the right do you think are like thinking that they're like, oh yeah, I actually do hate Jews, but I just don't want that to be the message that people are seeing, but that's definitely what I believe. Do you
Um,
what?
in terms of the overall conservative population, I couldn't really guess. Um, I would probably guess somewhere in the ballpark, like between 10 and 20%. The problem is more the commentators, the pundits. Because the pundits are aware of the fact that those groups of people are a necessary political constituency without which they could not win elections. So, at the very least, Republican pundits have to be accepting of and catering to the ultra far right, like neo-Nazi types. That's at the very least. But people who are willing to cater towards those types of people are also a lot more likely to be them. That's my issue.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I wanted to get at was what's your reasoning for saying that they are doing that they like are trying to court these people. How do you know that that's like a big thing that's going on right
They
now?
literally have to. I mean, who do you think racists vote for in the United States? Democrats? Like
Well, no,
when it comes
um,
to basically every value we're talking about here, racism, anti-Semitism, transphobia, these are Republican values. Republicans are the ones who get those votes. It's like they say, not every Republican is a racist, but every racist is a Republican. Not far off, really. And this goes back all the way to the 1960s at the very least, right? Like after the blah blah Nixon Southern strategy shit that everyone knows about. An active effort was made to use coded language as a way of appealing to
mm,
racists who were unhappy with the Civil Rights Act. Now that it was no longer politically acceptable to openly advocate against like black people being first-class citizens.
yeah, um, so yeah, there's the Southern strategy, but how can you be so sure that like that's that's really still what's going on? Because a lot has changed since then.
Well, it's
Uh,
a pretty wild coincidence then that basically all Republican politicians have followed in line with finding ways to continue to promote anti-black political talking points in like thinly veiled, coded ways. How like the president of the Republicans went on constant attacks against Black Lives Matter and fearmongered about white suburbs being overrun. I mean, you see, like the euphemisms that are used to attack black people today are less subtle than the ones they used back in the 1960s. Welfare queens, forced busing, these things are less subtle than Republicans just up and saying Black Lives Matter protesters are un-American terrorists. Like that's more directly race war shit than the people who were openly anti the Civil Rights Act were able to do back in the 60s. So, like, yeah, nothing's changed there. I don't think what I'm doing is mind reading. Like, this is just, like, very straightforward, obvious stuff in terms of, like, where they need to go to keep their votes.
So how are you so sure that what they're doing is like intentional dog whistling euphemisms? Like, couldn't it? How do you know it's not just like the, what they say is exactly what they mean, not, and it's not some sort of has anything to do with race or whatever. Just just
They do say
whatever.
what
Just
they
like
mean. Dog whistles aren't lying. If you express a dog whistle, you're not like you're not leaving something unsaid in terms of like keeping info on the table. It's just another way of presenting the same information. Like if a white supremacist says 1488 and gives the okay sign, then drinks a big gulp of milk, they're not lying. They're just presenting information in a deliberately veiled way. And I guess I can believe two things. Like, on one hand, I can believe that the political party that consistently receives the votes and the endorsements of basically all wings of reactionary racist thought in America are just accidentally repeating all of the talking points that are like evolutions of the Southern strategy, like racist talking points. And all of the things they say are just coincidentally in line with reactionary thought. Or I can, like, I don't know, doesn't that seem a bit unlikely to you that like this gigantic political party just happens to keep accidentally doing all of the things they would have to do to appeal to racists in the vote, and they keep all the dog whistles and all the general political strategies, and it's all just a coincidence?
well, so like yeah, when we're talking about uh Republicans or whatever, when you talk about them, using euphemisms, dog whistles, like, so you think that they're intentionally, they know what they're doing. That like, oh yes, I'm gonna word it like this, but I'm but I'm what I really mean is like
Well, it's not just
anti-black stuff.
it's not just euphemisms and dog whistles. Donald Trump just yesterday said that we should suspend the Constitution to make him leader. Tucker Carlson has said that bringing in immigrants could dilute the founding stock of the country. Like open tirades against multiculturalism have been made by a ton of Republican politicians and pundits. Donald Trump did say that Black Lives Matter protesters are un-American terrorists. His attorney general did consider using anti-sedition charges to go after them. Like, these aren't even dog whistles. They're just doing the thing, you know?
So yeah, well, when we're talking about, well, first of all, Trump, I definitely don't like him. So I mean, I'll agree with criticisms of him there, but and people like Tucker Carlson, he's definitely on part of the like the worst wing of the right. But so I don't like what they say, but I think there's definitely differences between that and like, and just like mainstream Republicans and conservatives that genuinely just believe that like oh, I don't like illegal immigration, or I don't don't want like lots, I like small government, so I don't like lots of welfare or whatever. Like maybe they actually mean that, and it's not because like, oh, it's because I don't want black people to get benefits, or it's because, oh, I don't want brown people in the country. I mean when you talk about extreme,
they vote for who they
what?
vote for at the end of the day. But also, I don't know if I really believe that. If that was the case, then why does it always have to come back to race when it comes to Republican messaging? Like, they don't just talk about welfare. They talk about welfare queens. They don't just talk about illegal immigration. They talk about immigrants broadly. They fearmonger. They lie about like cartel movement or MS-13. If the voting base was just motivated by these like race neutral or reactionary neutral things, why does the Republican Party need to keep going back to racist messaging to appeal to them?
Well, that's what I mean is like, I'm kind of like, how do you know that it's like when we're talking about, so yeah, those examples you just said, like being anti-immigration, stuff like that. So if if someone's particularly anti-immigration and that's what their message is, how how do you know it's racial uh, if they're not bringing race into it? Like,
Well, it could be usually in the ways they talk about it. Like if they complain about immigration but exclusively focus on like non-white countries, if they fearmonger about it in dishonest ways, to make people like scared in ways that align with racist messaging about like dirty brown people, if they use terms like dirty to describe like immigrants coming in, like these all overlap with race tropes, you know. I would say being anti-immigrant is like inherently racist to begin with, unless you have a good reason to. There is no reason to be anti-immigrant in America anyway, you know. I reject the idea that there's some mythical, like, good reason to be anti-immigrant. I don't believe that.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm very pro-immigration, so I'm center right, so I'm by no means I'm very actually anti-extremist, but my problem is like you seem to think that when you talk about the people on the right being very uh, being racist and all the other bigoted things.
Mhm.
It's definitely true for some, but you seem
Like
to think it's like this.
nonstop. Like on every issue associated with race, they are always on the racist side, with like no exceptions.
I mean, like I know. Well, I mean, like I know, I know that's what you're saying, but I'm talking about like I'm saying it's true like that with for some people on the right, but you make it sound like, or you seem to believe that it's like most uh when most people on the right, they're like hardcore extreme, like uh intentionally, like knowingly bigoted on all these issues.
Oh, I don't think they're knowingly bigoted. But if they vote for those people, they are bigoted in that respect, right? In terms of the outcomes of their behavior, they're definitionally acting like with prejudice.
But I mean not all people on the right are the same though. I mean, like even I'm even just talking about different Republicans to vote for. They're not all uh they're not all like, so like the Kanye West thing that happened. There were many people on the right, Republican uh, politicians, stuff. They came out and strongly uh, condemned, all the, what Kanye West said and did, and
Yeah,
Trump's
he didn't use the dog
meeting with
whistles
Nick
they like.
Fuentes. Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, you really think
Yes.
they're not being genuine? So I just still don't. I don't get how you're so confident that they're all. It's like they but like all these Republican politicians, like even a significant amount of them are like genuinely like, oh yeah, I like what Kanye and is saying. I like what Nick Fuentes is saying, but I just don't like. But I'm just gonna come out and pretend to condemn it just so that it doesn't
Well,
make us
pretty
look bad.
pretty wild that Senator Gassar and Marjorie Taylor Greene both like attended conferences and appeared alongside neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes,
Yeah, yeah, and
receiving no broader condemnation from the party outside of a couple of like more hand-wringing like Ben Shapiro-esque criticisms. Um, like for one. But I mean, leaving aside that, the broader point is that Republicans are like the Republican Party is a fascist organization. The presidential candidates they're putting forward are fascists. The policies they put forward are fascistic. Their broader messaging is fascistic. In an environment where the entire party as an organ is committed towards the promotion of fascist values and of power grabbing in a fascist way, there's not really any reason for me to give them the benefit of the doubt when it's infinitely more reasonable and likely that they're just in line with those values, right? I mean, like, why wouldn't they be? Like, you telling me that Republican politicians have some kind of principled opposition to racism? The guys who were wanted to
hmm
bring like treason charges against Black Lives Matter protesters, the people who made fun of George Floyd as he was killed, the people who didn't take seriously like the I can't breathe shit, like all the way back in 2016 or whatever, the people who took the side of Zimmerman, like, you think these people are like morally opposed to racism? Like, why would they be, right?
Well, yeah, this gets back to one of my issues is that you seem to be doing a huge generalization. Like you mentioned, like Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like I 100% agree. Those are terrible, and they, uh, but and they. I have nothing positive to say about them at all. Uh, but they don't represent. They certainly don't represent the whole Republican Party.
But yeah, but we can't do this game forever, where it's like, oh, here's 5 million examples, and it's like, ah, well, there are actually 70 million Republicans, so this doesn't represent the whole. I'm talking about the party as a whole. Like,
Yeah,
we don't need to go through like example bingo. Right now, the entire Republican Party has thrown its weight behind the idea that America is full of degeneracy, that our children are being harmed by an elite group of liberal degenerates, and that the only way to restore order is with essentially the suspension of democracy, the negation of our democratic system, and the appointment of a strongman. That none of that is like embellishment. That's explicitly what they're trying to do right now. All of their messaging is fascist in nature. The myth of like a greater America in the past that they want to return to, you know, the return to tradition bullshit. The obsession with like masculine strength as an innate virtue, the rejection of progressivism, to the point where DeSantis, the other president, you know, you've got two presidential frontrunners, right? One of them's Donald Trump, who called to suspend the Constitution of the United States, and it put him in power yesterday. The other one is DeSantis, who's currently fighting for the Stop Woke Act in Florida. His lawyers just defined woke legally as any effort to identify systemic inequality in the United States and argue it should be changed. He is literally trying to outlaw the concept of progressive education. So like, sorry if I'm not willing to like extend that much individual charity when the party as a whole has thrown its weight behind two fascist options, you know?
okay, so you're saying that it's like an objective reality that the whole party, or even just a significant, huge, most of the party even, is like fully fascist, and that's what they want. You're saying that that's like objectively true.
I don't need to prove how much of the party is. The two presidents they're running are. Like, I don't have a like percentage of party membership breakdown. The things that they're doing in the country are fascist. Like, that's the point of the group. Like, that's what they're doing.
When you say they as the whole party, but so how?
What
So
group
what
are
do you
you
mean when you
defending?
say the whole?
Wait, what group are you
What?
defending here? Like, what group? Because any group of people that you're trying to speak on behalf of here is voting for fascists, no? Or is there some kind of conservative Republican I'm unaware of where they don't vote for any of these people or any of the people who support these people? Like, what imaginary group of Republicans is not complicit in or an active promoter of fascism right now?
Okay, so me personally,
I
I
thought it would be that.
well, yeah, I was going to say, me personally, I I like the the quote establishment wing that everyone calls, or that the MAGAs will call establishment, rhino, all the buzzwords.
Like who?
Um, uh, we can say Mitch McConnell, for example.
Mitch
I know he's.
McConnell? The
I'm
guy
probably the only person that likes him, but
who backed Trump through his entire term and illegally prevented Obama from putting it forward a Supreme Court appointment, thus guaranteeing a conservative court that went on to revoke Roe v. Wade. The guy who refused to impeach Trump, who had conversations
wait,
with Republican senators beforehand where they agreed there was no way they were going to impeach Trump no matter what evidence was brought to them in the impeachment case. That McConnell, I would call him a collaborator charitably. I think he's a full-on fascist.
okay, so you said through the whole Trump administration, he support. So I mean, obviously McConnell supported Trump whenever because whenever Trump did like mainstream conservative things, obviously McConnell would be in line with that, but
Yes, that is a fascist collaborationism.
no, I'm so even just mainstream like conservative
Yes.
policies
If you're in
like, are
Germany
all fascist.
and you support Hitler whenever he's doing the lightly Nazi stuff, but then when the mega Nazi stuff comes up, you just kind of tap your foot and go, oh well, but don't actually do anything about it. Yes, you're a collaborator by definition.
So, you think that like every Republican policy, whether it's like mainstream moderate or MAGA or whatever, you think that's all like fascist or fascist light?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
literally every policy pushed, like sometimes they'll push like, here's a law on when you can go on the park or whatever, not literally every policy put out. But yes, in terms of like what the party as an instrument does, in terms of the legislation they support and push through, I mean, Christ, they couldn't even back a bill defending interracial and gay marriage a couple of days ago. Yeah. And
Well,
if they
wait.
did anything to further the political aims of Donald Trump or the Republican Party broadly, they're still fascist collaborators at the very least.
Okay. Um, so like even just like would you say that even like regular economic uh conservative economic ideas like being like the being pro free market capitalist or whatever, or like the positions of like tax cuts and deregulation.
Those are
You,
things that
you,
fascists like. But if you're doing so from the Republican Party, you're doing so in a way that defends the institution of the Republican Party, which is a fascist institution. See, the politicians don't just make these, like, they don't make these votes on a lark. They do so because they are essentially told to or encouraged to by their corporate backers. That's not a conspiracy theory. Like, yeah, all political groups listen to businesses and use that to inform the types of economic policies they back. It's pretty ubiquitous. Meaning that any time Republican adjacent bills, even ones that aren't directly fascistic, get passed, the Republican Party is strengthened. The groups that fund them are strengthened. Their political messaging is strengthened. Their agenda is strengthened. And since they are broadly a fascist party, this is still fascist enabling. The only way to avoid this would be to not do anything within the Republican Party as it currently exists.
so I know you're pretty far left. So I know you say you don't like the Democrat Party either, but so would this apply to like? Because to me, this seems like pretty extreme statements. Would you say they also apply to like the mainstream Democratic Party as well?
Mainstream Democratic Party has certainly done stuff that has aided the Republicans in their mission to control the United States. So yes, I'm very willing to say that at times they have also engaged in not collaboration, but enabling. Don't even get me started on Joe Manchin. But there is a difference. If both the Republican and the Democrats wanted to pass the exact same bill, there is a difference between supporting it from within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Because the Republican Party is, at this moment, innately fascist, literally anything done within or to the support of the Republican Party is fascist collaborationism. Because anything they accomplish will strengthen the party. The only thing you could do within the GOP that isn't would be an active attempt to undermine the GOP. Like, all this makes sense if you think about it from the perspective of the Nazis, right? Like, if you're in the Nazi party and you're supporting the Nazis as they try to put forward more like moderate civic stuff, but not stepping against them when they do the more openly Nazi stuff, you're obviously a collaborator.
Yeah, I just don't think the Republican Party is comparable to the Nazi Party, though. I totally get what you're saying. Like the logic would make sense, but I just don't agree with the premise that those two are comparable. Like,
Well, they're
so
definitionally fascist, so the question would be, are they Nazi? My answer to that would be, it doesn't really matter. Them being fascist is sufficient for me to apply that comparison.
I'm not so sure that saying the Republican Party is fascist is like an objective, like factually, that's what, like definitionally that they are. Like, that seems to be something that only people on the far left say.
Well, people on the far left are often correct when others aren't. But if you want to talk about like the tenets of fascism, we could talk about like economic collaborationism with the merger of corporate power with state, which they are certainly in favor of. We can talk about political reactionary or politically reactionary systems, which they are certainly in favor of. We can talk about authoritarianism, which again, Trump just called to suspend the Constitution. Ron DeSantis wants to ban teachers in Florida from even teaching progressive politics. So, yeah. We can talk about conspiracism, or the fact that the modern Republican grievance is entirely predicated upon the completely debunked idea that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. We can talk about the ultranationalism, obviously something they promote. We can talk about the xenophobia. We even talked about their irrational fear of immigration, something you agree with. There is no tenet of fascism they don't adhere to. There's not really there's not I don't know where like what angle you could come at this from without that being a conclusion.
So, I certainly agree that I certainly would say that right now the Republican Party is in a terrible place, and I'm not happy with it at all, uh, because of because of all the Trumpism and all that has brought. So what if we were to talk about pre-Trump Republican Party? How how different would you say that is from now? Like,
I think that
yeah.
neoconservatism lays the seeds for fascism at the very least. The Republican Party, even during its more neocon period, was still like a lighter version of all the things that I've described there. Like Reagan set in motion pretty much all of this, from like austerity politics and corporate collaborationism to rampant xenophobia, hypernationalism, reactionary politics, militarism, an obsession with machismo and machoism as a substitute for political analysis, anti-intellectualism. It all, like, it goes back as far as you can find. The Republican Party's just bad and dumb. But under, since 2016, I would say that it has gone from being, it has gone from being, neoconservative and fascist, at least, like, enabling, to being openly, definitionally fascist.
So, like, so just to give a little like background of where I'm coming from, uh, I used to be more conservative. I've I've only recently become more moderate, like a lot more moderate. Uh, but so like my whole thing is like the things that I care about like are primarily like foreign policy based, and as my name or my username said, I consider myself neoconservative, at least on foreign policy, which I know isn't popular these days. But so like if we talk about like the Bush administration, Bush Jr. So I mean, obviously, with my views that I have, I wouldn't agree with some of the things about him, like social conservatives type stuff. But the reason why I'm like still lean like Republican is it, now I know you wouldn't really agree with this, but I think at least certainly not with the Trumpist wing, but their foreign uh, their foreign policy more aligns with mine. So
What do you mean by
uh,
foreign policy, though? Like, what are you looking to accomplish overseas?
um, so like neoconservative stuff. So I mean, obviously, uh, like the idea of democracy spreading, that would be a while down the road. There's a lot we would have to do first, but
We've never really done that.
well, anyways, my point is like, so here's a better way to put it. So um, my worry is like the Democratic Party, um, is that it's not capable of having the foreign policy that I think we should have, and it seems that only the Republican Party has been and is capable of being the vessel for the type of things that I want.
But
But you know,
keep in mind,
what?
we're talking about something that you're so interested in, you're willing to accept, like the fascist direction the Republican Party has taken. But right now, if you care about democracy abroad, what about the fact that it is pretty much entirely Republicans who are either directly supporting or associating with Putin, or demanding we no longer provide money to Ukraine? I mean, if you want to spread democracy abroad, protecting Ukraine, a U.S. ally under attack from a fascist empire, that's one of the most direct examples we could do. But Republicans are opposing us giving them money, and the Biden admin has been giving them money. Trump is friendly
Well,
with Putin, with Kim Jong-un, with Bolsonaro, fascist governments abroad, whereas Biden has strengthened relationships with basically every democracy on the planet, up to the point of sending a White House official to defend Lula in Brazil from a potential coup attempt from Bolsonaro, should that come about.
So I strongly agree with supporting Ukraine. Nobody's more pro-Ukraine than I am, but
I know
the
who's less
idea that
pro-Ukraine than you are, the Republicans.
well, no, that's what I was going to get to is that's if you looked at Congress, vast majority of Republicans supported the pro-Ukraine bills. I mean, there were some that that were against it, but most of them supported it. So it's not like this that being anti Ukraine is at all like a representative view of the Republican Party as a whole, at
I,
least like in Congress.
yeah, but the Democrats supported it more. I mean, you're trying to sell me right now on like, okay, I can deal with the fascism as long as my foreign policy positions are met. But the foreign policy position you've listed so far is one Democrats are better on.
Okay, so well now, so like, uh, yes, Democrats have been correct on this, um, but of course, just supporting Ukraine, I mean, isn't good enough
But what is it? Like, what are you,
for,
what are the Republicans
me.
doing that has earned your loyalty?
Like,
Uh,
well, so I'm think so. What I was trying to get at was, there definitely are more more in the Republican Party that are anti Ukraine than there are in the Democratic Party. But the ones in the Republican Party who are pro Ukraine, you know, that sort of type of Republican, which is the one that which is the kind that I'm defending. They they're often like even more hawkish than Democrats are. So
I think you're not selling me on this right now. In terms of
I know.
like support for Ukraine, the Democrats have been better than Republicans on average. You're telling me that you disagree with Republicans on like basically everything except foreign policy, and the one issue you've listed thus far is one in which the Democrats are better than Republicans by your own standards. What is
Well,
it?
no.
It's
So
wait. It's
what?
Israel, isn't it?
Well, I mean that's not. I mean, I'm very pro-Israel, but that wasn't
It's
certainly
Israel.
not the only thing.
It's
Well,
got to
no,
be
that's not.
Israel.
There's a lot more. There's a lot more. So, like, when we're just talking about like supporting Ukraine and stuff, I was saying that there are more Democrats supporting it than not, but that they still don't. That doesn't mean they're good on it. All the other, like,
So what else? So tell me another front. Like you say,
yeah. So like, yeah. So
you're supporting fascism here. I need a good reason. I need an
well,
explanation.
I don't think. Well, I don't agree with that, but like, I think Iran is a big problem that Democrats are not good enough on.
What? Wait,
Uh,
why? Democrats negotiated the nuclear, the the bill under Obama, then Trump just reneged it with like nothing else and broke the deal and made us look weak.
Well, yeah. Well, so then now we're gonna start getting into disagreements about like what the deal is, which I don't want to do for this conversation. But just to be clear, I'm not. Trump is not at all a representation of things I like. I didn't like him at all.
Okay, but like you can't keep saying like, okay, well the reason I consider myself a Republican is because of this thing, and this thing you're referring to isn't real, and in reality the Democrats are better on it.
Oh no, it's that. Oh, sorry. It's that that the other wing of the Republican Party, the non-Trump wing. That's what I'm talking about. Like the
one that's not in power. The one that was completely disempowered and that has been licking Trump's boots for the past 6 years?
Well, no, I think a lot of what's going on is there's still a good amount of those Republicans in, but because the base is so rabidly pro-Trump,
so fascist.
Well, because the base is rabidly very pro-Trump, the other wing of the Republican Party, they have to, they have to thread the needle of, well, to get, it's just, the way they have to do politics to get the votes, but because they can't look too, rhetorically, they can't be too...
You're making my point, right? That the Republican Party as an organ is committed to fascism, and therefore, even if there are individual people within it, they still have to move with the whole. Like earlier you were like, oh, well, there are still individuals that were good. And now you're like, okay, well, the good individuals still have to do the bad thing with the bad people because that's how politics works, which is exactly my point.
Well, if we're talking about like just the base, just the voters, yeah, they're pretty much almost or most are very pro-Trump, which I don't like. But what I'm mainly referring to is like I think that there's still a significant portion of the Republican Party that isn't that way. They just have to pretend to they have to pretend to be like
racist, transphobic, militantly authoritarian.
Like they have to pretend to be like Trump adjacent in order to not, get.
They're not pretending to be Trump adjacent. They are just with Trump. Like they're not. The consequences of them voting for Trump and with Trump and siding with him aren't like imaginary. It's a real thing that's happened.
I mean, they sided with him when it came to just whenever there was overlap with just like regular Republican policy.
They sided with him on everything. There has been the Republican Party completely fell in line. There has been no pushback on Trump from within the Republican Party at all over the entirety of the time that he has been in power. And the only reason we're seeing it now is because they have another guy lined up, DeSantis, who is as bad or worse.
So you think, so someone like DeSantis, who I'm not really that supportive of, you think that he would be the Trump aspects, but he would have all the Trump aspects, but even worse? You think that?
He's also a fascist.
So you think that, so like when you said they've gone along with Trump with everything, like when it comes to like when it came to what you say are fascist things, you think what exactly are the explicitly fascist things about Trump that you say that the whole entire Republican Party completely went with?
Can you think of anything they didn't?
Well, I mean,
because I would just list everything Trump's done. Like, can you think of a time that they've pushed back? Because even when Trump lied repeatedly over like half a year about him losing the election, the Republican Party was like, some people in the Republican Party eventually were like, yeah, okay, he actually did lose. But even then, like, the idea that Trump had the election stolen from him is like a mainstream Republican thing. It's enshrined into a bunch of like state Republican party platforms, and it's repeated constantly by politicians and by pundits on their side with no internal agitation or infighting. Same with January 6th. You get a performative tut-tut from McConnell or whatever. McConnell still seems perfectly comfortable, like, working alongside people who attempted a coup, you know? We got his tut-tut, his performative little, oh, Trump's very uncivil, what a bad boy behavior. But, you know, it didn't change anything. Can you think of anything that the Republican Party has not backed Trump up on?
Well, you just mentioned January 6th. That certainly wasn't. That was certainly not a whole Republican Party involved thing.
They weren't all involved, but they were all been complicit. Otherwise, they would be screaming for his head in a pike. A sane political party. Do you know what would have happened if a Democrat had attempted a coup by organizing armed supporters to storm a building to kill his political opponents? That Democrat, I'll tell you, he would have gotten more than a tut-tut. They would have, every imaginable denunciation and legal action would have been taken against him. Whereas Republicans, the most we got from them was some tut-tutting from half the party. The rest of them basically completely supported it.
Well, so with the Republican Party, this is part of the reason why I said they're in a very bad place right now, is that rhetorically they go along with Trump.
They're not in a bad place. They're stronger because of it. They're being fascists.
Well, what I mean by, I just mean in a bad place, meaning not, well, anyways, let me just move on to my point, which was, you know, there's Republicans who are rhetorically, you know, supporting Trump. And I think that, I still think, yeah, even that is not good. I wish a lot of them had more courage to straight up.
They're not babies. They're some of the most powerful people in the world.
Well,
rhetorically, as a politician, rhetorical support is support. Like, I feel like there's this imaginary version of the GOP that you want to coddle and protect when all of the actual GOP is acting against that vision of yours. So anytime reality doesn't coincide with your vision, it's like, oh, well, you know, how unfortunate that this brief and temporary diversion from their true behavior must be recognized. But, like, it's not. This is just what they're doing. This is what they are now.
Well, I mean, like, because the base is so pro-Trump, which that in itself is a bad thing. You know, a lot of them can't just be openly straight up against him, you know, like Liz Cheney was, and she, you know, she got voted out for that. So they have to play this rhetorical game.
No,
but that doesn't mean that a significant portion of the Republican Party, let's say, for example, like, if it were up to this wing of the Republican Party that I'm talking about, let's say let's say January 6th was more successful than it actually was, and there was a real danger.
There was more danger.
Even more, no, yeah, I mean, even more of a danger of it, you know, being successful. Like, that even though these Republicans that I'm talking about, even though they rhetorically say, you know, all these things, but they would not.
So again, it's funny that your initial criticism of me is that I was doing psychoanalysis, and right now you're jumping through hoops trying to explain how the thing the Republicans you like are doing is actually, like, not what they want to be doing, that they're being held hostage and not collaborating with fascists of their own will. Like, you're the one inventing, like, mind excuses for their behavior. They're just doing the collaborationism. And you still haven't told me what differences between the Republicans and the Democrats make you want to vote Republicans, because on every issue you align more with Democrats, except for foreign policy.
I do want to get...
And then you listed issues where the Democrats are better aligned with you than the Republicans are.
Yeah, I actually do want to get into that. And I did want to elaborate on that. I guess my thinking, it kind of goes back to that. I don't remember exactly how the saying goes. Don't like ascribe something evil when it could just be just human error or yeah, I
Yeah,
can't remember.
I don't believe that. We're talking about one of the most powerful political orgs on earth. Like that line works when we're talking about individual human beings. Like your mom forgetting to get you food and you understanding it was a mistake rather than an insult. We're not talking about like organizations larger and better organized and funded than like the Roman Empire. You know? I don't like you're coddling them. Uh
So you, or what were I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you
Oh
gonna?
no, just like I completely reject this. This whole like, oh, they're not fascist. They're just coincidentally doing and saying everything fascists would, and it benefits them to do so. But it's all an accident. It's all of it is an accident and a mistake, and actually, it's not real. Like that's
Oh
not
no,
how.
that's not what I mean. I just mean like
That is what you're saying.
well, what I mean is like so you don't think it's possible that that a significant uh like I'll just call it the so-called establishment wing of the Republican Party, that they have to play these dumb rhetorical games to not piss off the base, but that doesn't mean like in practice that they would actually go along with like doing a January
They
6th.
are. They did. They did. Otherwise, they would have been calling for blood. Them even being willing to be a part of the same party as a guy who attempted a coup afterwards. Like the fact that the most they got was tut-tutting is collaborationism. If you are in the same party as a presidential candidate who after losing attempted a violent coup and failed, and the most you can summon after that is, oh, that was not good, Trump doesn't represent us, then you are a collaborator.
Well,
And all of this happened in Germany, by the way, all of it. After Hindenburg appointed Adolf Hitler as chancellor, and they had a combined Nazi conservative cabinet, tons of conservatives thought, oh, the Nazis are crazy for the votes or whatever, but they'll mellow out when they're given power, you know. We'll go along because they're popular and we'll use their popularity to our benefit, but we're not actually going to commit to it. Every single one of those conservatives ended up, guess what? Either they went along with it and eventually became members of the Nazi Party, or they ended up in graves because they were shot in the back of the head by the Schutzstaffel after it became clear that they were not willing to move along with the party line. But up until they were shot in the back of the head, they were fascist collaborators because they were part of the Conservative Party that appointed Adolf Hitler, that backed Adolf Hitler, that worked with Adolf Hitler, that supported them up to the end.
wait, um, so the establishment wing, like so that's a big claim. I think that's a really big claim that like this is just like what happened in Nazi Germany would. You think what you're seeing right now is enough? You've seen enough evidence that this is like very comparable to Nazi Germany, and that something like that has a very real possibility of happening right now.
Yes, World War II historians think the exact same way. In fact, a bunch of them met with President Biden a couple of months ago to explain to him that, hey, it's happening here. That's not just my opinion. It's not just a lefty opinion. It's just the opinion of people familiar with that history, yeah. But outside of that, and the similarities, I'm only making the point about collaborationism. It doesn't matter if they're just rhetorically playing along. If you're rhetorically playing along, and the thing you're playing along to is a fascist political party gaining power, it doesn't matter internally how you feel about that. Because at the end of the day, the group that you're empowering will either accept you as a collaborator or kill you when you've stopped being useful. But in both situations there, you remain a collaborator.
So would you say, do you think it's possible at all that like that if it did escalate further, like Trumpist type, what you would call fascist activities, if that were to escalate like to an even more extreme level, you think that that for sure, like every other Republican like wouldn't try to, even if they may, rhetorically say different things, you don't think it's possible that they like, if it escalated further, that they wouldn't try to stop, they wouldn't go along with it or try to stop it or whatever?
It's possible that some of them might. I think the overwhelming majority of them wouldn't, because they've been going along with everything up to that point. We already saw January 6th, where they continued to go along with it.
Well, what do
Continued
you
to
mean by
defend.
go along with it after January 6th?
They still support Trump. It doesn't matter if they weren't there to personally storm the Capitol. Like, they
Well,
have...
well, when you say they, are you referring to like Republican politicians or just like regular voters or whatever?
Both. Republicans, I think something like a majority of Republicans believe in the big lie, the idea that the election was stolen. And
Well, yeah, the base does for sure, but
the Republican politicians are... So I can't mind read, but based on the actions of the politicians, yeah, they do continue to support Trump. The only lack of support we've seen recently is because, again, DeSantis is now a viable candidate. And that's not a rejection of Trump's behaviors. That's just finding a less insane guy to back the same ideology. But yeah, like, they've continued to support Trump. Has that waned? Like, after January 6th, did Republican base support in Trump wane? The answer is no.
well, I think among politicians it did.
Well, it doesn't matter if they kept supporting him. Like, you can point to some like imaginary
No,
metric.
I meant, I think what I meant was among like the establishment or whatever, that yes, it did wane for Trump. Like,
So
they,
what would they like not seek to impeach him? Would they try to leave the party? If they don't support Trump, then why are they still a part of the party that has him as the front runner?
well, because there's two parties, and so they're gonna use they're gonna be in whichever one traditionally their core values align with. So it's just like playing politics. They have to they have to thread a needle.
You keep agreeing with what I'm saying without realizing it. Again, like, toe the Nazi line, oh yeah, I don't agree with the beer hall putsch, where Adolf Hitler got together some of his old military buddies and tried to declare like one Germany or whatever. I don't agree with any of that, but I'm still going to be a part of the Nazi party, because there are other ideas that I align with, such as... And then you never get them to elaborate on the such as, because the only reason a person would be a Republican or a Nazi is because they have bad ideas. But like, again, you're gesturing towards like an imagined difference, like an imagined line there. But it's not there. Like, Trump remained the core of the Republican Party after attempting a coup. There is no greater denunciation of the party than that.
Well, okay, so let's I think this is a good opportunity to go into like the earlier about when we were talking about the differences between Republicans and Democrats. You wanted me to elaborate, which I do. So I think, so I know that like my views on a lot of like personal, just like political views, I know you won't agree with, but like, so if someone supports like I do, like I would say I'm economically lean more towards like the mainstream Republicans on when it comes to like economics.
Tell me specific like bills that you would want passed that only Republicans could get you.
Let's like for example, we can talk about the tax one that was passed under Trump, blowing the corporate tax rate.
Yeah, that sucked. That was bad. And lowered.
Well, yeah, I know you'll disagree, but
tax rate for wealthy people, but not for poor people.
I know. Yeah, I know we'll disagree on our views about the bill, but I'm saying like things like that. Democrats are against,
Well, that's good. Like the disagreement here isn't immaterial. Like an obsession with austerity and with corporate power is also a fascist value. The term
Well,
privatization was literally like descriptive of Nazi Germany's economic policies.
so, well, I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know how much like you know about. Well, I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but like on this issue, in particular, like there's a lot of like this not fringe economists that think the corporate tax should be lowered. Um, so it's not like this out fringe, crazy idea, unless you were to think that like a lot of
Well,
just mainstream.
fascism is also not a fringe idea. It's pretty popular these days. It doesn't mean I have to go along with it. But this is worth fascism. Like
Well, no,
so
no, no.
by your own
There's more I want
admission,
to get
like the
into.
whole party. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, I don't. Um, so yeah, when it comes to like core regular issues, uh, like so, like I said on economics and on foreign policy, which we can get in, I can elaborate more on. I say I align more with Republicans, but not the
But like
not
tell me policies that you
yeah. So
want implemented.
okay, so for example, uh, okay, I would go back to foreign policy. So I don't, so like with the Iran deal, like which you mentioned earlier, I don't support that at all, and uh, I think I think it was a dangerous deal, and Republicans are better on that issue,
Why?
and that's something I really care about. What did you say?
Well, why? It's a good deal. It was like internationally praised.
Yeah, and I don't, and I just don't agree. Like, it, I mean, we, I don't know if you want to like
But
turn the
like
debate into
why?
about the Iran deal, but well, because it didn't, it, well, first of all, I know you won't like this argument at all, but it was more dangerous for Israel, our ally, and
That they not
they were against it.
that they not have a nuclear weapons program?
Well, no, yeah, we do. That's the point. Is that yeah, we don't want Iran to have nukes, but the
What?
deal wasn't a good way of doing that. I mean,
But the
I
deal's better than nothing.
well, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into a whole entire debate about foreign policy and the specifics on certain policies related to every little aspect, but that I know we disagree on. But my broader point is like, so I know
I
that
just want to
you,
know what you believe because you're not telling me like anything really. You're
okay,
saying like you're saying it's bad. So like what? In what way?
well, okay, I can,
I know it's not a perfect deal. I mean, nope, but that's diplomacy. Like, you never get a perfect deal. That's sort of the name of the game.
yeah, so here to give a better background, I'll just elaborate a little bit on like my core values or whatever. Um, so like, um, you know, I've said I'm center right, so I would say I would say I'm both liberal and neoconservative. So
But you vote for the
socially,
fascists though.
well, I mean, not exclusively. I've voted Democrat as well. Um,
For the presidency?
I've only voted once, or in one presidential election, uh, which, I mean, I did vote for Trump, but that, to be fair, that was back when I was more conservative.
Well, that's a 100% record so far. Well, we'll see. We could end up
Well,
with 50% in the next election.
I'm talking. Well, I don't know. That's because I wasn't talking just about presidential. I've only voted in one presidential, but I've voted in for all the other offices too, which I voted Democrat before. But and I've only recently become a lot more moderate. So like I would say I'm socially definitely liberal. So I mean so to an extent, I would on issues like there are issues where I would agree with Democrats more. But like social issues, the thing is like I care about like economic and foreign policy related issues more. So just like the general like pro business, low regulation, free market, capitalist like type policies that Republicans are more in line with.
But you can't
That's
really specifically give me any.
well, I mean, like like that's why like I'm explaining why like in like for example in the midterms or whatever for like some offices, that's what those would maybe be a reason why I would vote Republican in certain cases is because in general their economic policies line up more with mine. And
But I don't know what
I don't.
policies. That's the specific that I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, yeah,
It
you could.
doesn't, from my analytical framework, it doesn't matter because I can already kind of like slot you in, right? What you're talking about, like, I'm willing to vote for fascists because taxes will get lower. That's like an archetype. The like
Well,
the business guy, it's like, oh yeah, because there were a lot of these guys back in Nazi Germany too. Or sorry, the Weimar Republic before Nazi Germany, where they were like, okay, I don't really land with this like whole Aryan race Jewish stuff, but Adolf Hitler will definitely fuck up the communists who have been making moves lately and will take my business away. So I'll support Hitler because he'll be pro-business. And then, the whole Hitler thing happened. That's like an archetype, that's a social
yeah.
category.
So, well, yeah, I would say if I were to agree that that's what the Republican Party is, then yes, I would not vote Republican if that was if that premise if I agreed with that premise of that. Yeah, I wouldn't be Republican at all or support Republicans at all if I agreed with that. Which
But I gave my reasons why I think
yeah, I
the
know. Which
Republican Party is
yeah,
fascist.
I know, and which is why I was going to say. I mean, that's something I'll have to look more into, and because I mean, yeah, I mean, those are pretty big, important things that it would be very important to know if that's true or not. So, which is why I'm glad I did this. You were willing to talk to me because it's something that I want to, you know, make sure I'm correct on. So it's something I'll definitely look into more. And
I don't fault you for any of this. I can tell by the way that you talk that you're nervous, which is fine, because I was nervous the first time that I went to other streamers' programs as well, and they were at the time far smaller than I am now. I don't fault you for being curious about this stuff, or about... Look, I'll just say I can understand from the get-go why a claim being made by a communist like myself of, oh yeah, the Republicans are Nazis, it's all going to happen again, Hitler's going to happen again. I can understand trepidation on a topic like that. I don't think that takes away from the legitimacy of the claim. I strongly encourage you to look into it. The reason I'm talking like this right now is because we're past the end of the stream time, and I was actually going to have to go soon.
yeah, I apologize if I took too much of your time, and if you felt like this wasn't a good conversation. Didn't, definitely didn't want it to be completely fruitless or anything.
You didn't
But
take anything from me. I appreciated the conversation, and I'm glad that you talked with me. I don't know if we're going to be reaching any resolution in this convo, but that's okay. That's how life is sometimes. I'm really hungry.
Mm, yeah. Um. Well, thanks, and thanks for having letting me come on. And this was something I definitely care about, which is why I wanted to talk to you. But so yeah, thanks again uh,
I
for
hope I can
talking to me.
I hope I can see you again in chat in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched your content for a long time. I've I'm uh, usually just a lurker, but I decided to create an account to try and set up a debate. But yeah, appreciate having me on.
The pleasure's mine. And now I'll recognize you too. Take care, and I'll see you in the future. Okay? Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Bye. You all are so mean. I thought that was a nice conversation. Obviously he was a bit specifics averse, but I think I understand the archetypes at play here. The real how do I put this? Okay, let me say this. Are you guys ready for it? There was a version of this conversation that was less interesting, where he was a lot louder, asked fewer questions, and made more statements, but knew the same amount about politics that he did now. And the difference between this world and that one is that in this world, he's inquisitive, and in that world, he's not. And that's the reason why I like this world, because there are a million people like the one in that world, and very few like the one in this. So, yeah, that's the kicker for me. I'm glad that I spoke to him. Yeah, I get mean when people talk in circles. I get that, though. It's worth pointing out, of course. They're young. It's a big stream. I get that.